Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Red Pill Podcast 157. I hope you're all doing incredible this weekend. I have a very powerful decode that I'll be sharing with you all today, so I'm really excited. Let's just get straight into things. But before we get started, go ahead, get relaxed, get comfortable, grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea if it's the morning time, or a glass of wine or beer if it's a little bit later in the day, or any beverage of your choice. I'm just sticking with water today. I believe I did the same last week. Boring. But anyways, I hope you guys are doing amazing. And if you are new here to the Wolfpack, welcome. So great to have you here with us. If you've yet to get access to our Discord server, just go ahead and send me a direct message on Patreon with your Discord username, and I will reply back to you in a Patreon message with your Discord server invite. Please don't comment it below or email me. I won't be able to help you out with Discord that way, only through a Patreon direct message. And we have a bunch of altcoins to cover today. I might be able to get to 5 different coins. I'm not sure, just the timing of everything, because the priority is absolutely the decode. But nevertheless, we'll be going over, of course, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, as well as Mana, ICP, Filecoin, AIOZ network, and perhaps, if we can make it happen, Superverse. So got about 5 different altcoins alongside the usual 3 that we start everything off with. And we're going to be talking a lot today about the first phase of the month of April. I'm not sure what I'm going to be titling this one just yet, because it will be a very comprehensive decode, adding in a lot of different elements that we've been talking about throughout previous videos, previous podcasts, leading into this very special time frame of the start of April. So to kick things off, happy 3rd year anniversary to our mastermind community and the Wolfpack. I can't believe how quickly time flies, but I just wanted to let you all know that I am so grateful to be a part of your journey. It truly means the world to me, and I'm looking forward to many more years to come, and I can't wait to see what this 3rd year has in store for the Wolfpack. And just so grateful to be here with you all. Really means the world to me to have your support. Grateful for every single one of you. And we all are well aware that tomorrow Mercury will be stationed retrograde. So we have Mercury retrograde. We've been talking about this a lot lately in recent podcasts and videos. And I put emphasis on the pattern of Bitcoin usually topping out about 3 weeks before Mercury retrograde, which is the case for this recent iteration, since the current all-time high was 19 days before April 1st, right into this time frame. And that's right around the 3-week mark. And another pattern we identified is that in a majority of iterations of Mercury retrograde, we see Bitcoin is generally sideways and down, which is why last week I mentioned to take note of whatever price Bitcoin is on the daily close of April 1st. So by the time you watch this, we will perhaps have the daily close for March 31st, but we will need a full 24 hours from now plus to know where we'll be at on the first official daily close while Mercury is retrograde. Because there's a noticeable trend for Bitcoin's price action during Mercury retrograde, it tends to close at a similar price as to where it was when Mercury retrograde started. So you can mark your charts on April 24th, which will be the last day of Mercury retrograde, and of course, starting on April 1st, tomorrow. Just take note, because whatever Bitcoin's daily close is on April 1st, it's most likely to be very similar. And we've talked about this data for a while now. We're gonna recap it, but this is not me saying that Bitcoin will close at the exact same price. It is me showing you that there's a pattern where we seem to do this cyclically over the past 5 years especially. And when we take the time to isolate some different instances, whether that be looking at when Mercury is in a particular sign, etc., you start to see things align very nicely. And we have so much to cover today, so many dots will be connecting, but I just want you to know this point to make of whatever we close on tomorrow, it's likely based in the data, about 75% of the time, we tend to finish off this time frame of Mercury retrograde with a very similar price. Okay? So, one thing to also mention is that weekends lately have been very bullish, a lot more bullish than usual ever since we've moved into this new year. And we know last Sunday, the market was incredibly bullish for Bitcoin. Saw a 5% gain into the weekly close. So all of this bearish negative energy that was on this sell-off leading into Wednesday, March 20th, we had this lunar eclipse, and then we pivoted directly out of it, which has been a vibe lately. We've been doing this over and over again. Every time we have a full moon, we do in fact correct into the full moons, or we're at least sideways and slightly down. Here it's the same case, but then the moment that full moon is over, bounced out of it. That's very interesting that we've been doing that lately. It's still following very nicely along with the overall analysis we've shared going back years ago when I started the channel of how leaving a full moon, we're bullish into a new moon, and leaving a new moon, we're bearish into a full moon. And we did that this recent iteration. Bitcoin not correcting as much as we would have imagined for a healthy correction, but that's kind of the environment we're in when we have eclipse season. And I talked about this in the very beginning of last Red Pill, that when we have a lunar eclipse during a solar cycle, that makes lunar eclipses weaker, or it makes full moons weaker. And we've been in a solar cycle since April of last year. So we're coming up on the first full year since the start of our new solar cycle. And we will be in this solar cycle until March of 2025. So that means every lunar eclipse between now and March 2025 will be weaker. But the lunar eclipses will start to get very powerful in March of 2025 when we have that start of the lunar cycle. From now until then, it's a different story. We know that our solar eclipses are very powerful during solar cycles, and that's what we're in right now, meaning moving forward all the way until we get to 2025, all the solar eclipses will be very, very powerful for Bitcoin and the overall energy of the crypto market. Anyways, for those that are new to this analysis and need a quick recap, we'll analyze this Bitcoin Mercury retrograde chart that I created. We're looking at it right now, and we're going to go backwards through each one and take a mental note of any anomalies along the way. That's important because we're not saying what this chart will do or what this coin will do. We are showing the data. This is technical analysis, and we're adding in an esoteric element to it so that you can determine what's best to do for your investment thesis, for your wealth plan, for your financial situation. So we have this red box is every Mercury retrograde. Every time you see a red box, you'll know that it is a time frame where Mercury is stationed retrograde. And there's a pattern that we're going to see here of we tend to be sideways from the first day that we enter to the first day that we leave. It's a very similar price. We go back to this iteration over here. I'm going to turn off these moon phases, and you see sideways and down. Here, sideways, down. One thing to note about this iteration as well, it was during the month of April. We had Mercury retrograde during eclipse season, okay? That's what we're coming up to very soon. Over here, you have in this an anomaly, so we take note of that. Over here, sideways. Over here, sideways. Over here, actually down, but look, when you go from the day we started till the day we end, look at this pump. We came right back up to the same level in February 2022. Still call it sideways because where you look at our correction that we had into around 41,000 Bitcoin, we were back up at 41,000 Bitcoin right after this Mercury retrograde phase. Pretty fascinating. Here, anomaly. Take note of that. Here, sideways. Another thing to note about this is we had Mercury retrograde during eclipse season. Very powerful. Sideways and down. Here, anomaly. Very bullish. Here, bullish anomaly. Over here, sideways, down generally, and during eclipse season. You're seeing a pattern, right? This was also around the last halving, which happened in May of 2020. We have our lunar eclipse. We had a little bit of sideways around our solar eclipse. This is a very tough time to navigate because we had a black swan event, but just showing the data. So we have 2020 February leading into the C19 crash, down. Here we have down, but still pretty sideways in general. Here we have down from the day we got in there. Yeah, pretty much down. And then over here, sideways. I have a couple iterations going back in 2016 as well that I started keeping track of. And we can see that there are these uptrends during the time frames, but this pattern of coming in and leaving around similar prices, it's amazing how cyclical this is. Anyways, let's go back and note the anomalies we had. That's what's really the powerful point to all of this, because even though we have a majority of our data pointing us to sideways and down, we must be open-minded to what the opposite would be. And you could see it clear as day. We have these crazy bullish pumps during Mercury retrograde in some iterations. So we have note October of 2020, pretty bullish. February of 2021. Then we have October of 2021 leading into our prior all-time highs. And then we have this recent January of last year, the beginning of last year, very bullish. And you can see the style of those pumps. But that's only 4 out of 16 iterations that I went through. So that's 25% of the time. 1 out of every 4. And the only real pattern that I could see for those 4 iterations was that 2 of them happened in October and the other 2 were in Q1. So the other 2 were around January. And all of them were not during eclipse season. So we're talking about these pump time frames. Okay, so I'll quickly just let you know what we saw. They happened in October or January. Happened when we did not have an eclipse during the time frame. And right now, we have to consider where we're at today. We have a solar eclipse coming up. We have Mercury retrograde starting tomorrow. So this upcoming solar eclipse on April 8th is definitively during Mercury retrograde. And we're in Q2, technically. We're in April. And with the other 12 iterations where we're generally sideways with a correction during or after Mercury retrograde, and whenever we do have Mercury retrograde during eclipse season, which I showed you a little bit earlier, we get a choppy sideways and down market. And this example right here, it's the reason why I kind of paused on this chart, was the last time that we really had that sort of similar environment as to what we have today. So you can see April 2023, it's the same time of year, same month, same energy leading into the month. And we have Mercury retrograde, we have eclipse season, and this chop to the downside. But generally, the first 6 or 7 days or so were actually pretty bullish. And that would be like putting us into April 6th or 7th. And I'm going to cover that in a moment because I do have a little bit of an intuitive feeling that might be the case this time. Meaning, for the next week, we might be pretty bullish. And there is an opportunity for us to double top on the levels that we've recently set as our all-time highs. That would not shock me. You know what wouldn't shock me either? If we even went a little bit higher and made a slightly new all-time high coming soon. Maybe not just straight line breakout to the upside like many might anticipate, but kind of a structure like this, where we've recently gotten up into late March, we're starting to chop a little bit, and then we just have this final push up into the eclipse, and then the energy gets canceled. It's a theory, but it does feel like that's kind of the environment of what could be going down into the upcoming trading week. But all in all, we're going to cover it piece by piece, and you're going to see exactly where I'm coming from. So we have this example. It's a great example. Start of our solar cycle. We know that right now we're in a solar cycle. We're in the month of April. Back then we were in the month of April. We had a solar eclipse during the month of April, Mercury retrograde, all things are aligning. And now I want to show you the similarities of what it's like when Mercury retrograde happens at a time where we're in eclipse season. And you can see choppy, down, and we're sideways for effectively about 2 months. This had about 2 months of chop to the downside. Then we have May, June of 2021, which was right over here. And we have Mercury retrograde, eclipse season, and this was about 60 days of just chop to the downside. You see the way that we corrected too, how similarly it is to this, like, I believe it was a full moon. Boom. Look at that. So we have this full moon post Mercury retrograde, post eclipse season, and it was like a really solid low buying opportunity. But just like the prior iteration, about 60 days of this chop and to the downside. And then look at this. So we have solar eclipse during Mercury retrograde, and then generally pretty choppy, low volatility. And this took from right here to the recovery day. Yeah, it's looking at about almost 2 months. And then we recovered and we maintained the rest of our bull run after that. I do know that we got a little bit of a correction over here, but it was still higher lows. This was really some of the final buying ops. I guess this would be considered too. They're not the exact same phase of the cycle that we're in now, because Bitcoin has gotten a little too bullish too quickly. But I do find there to be something to be said about the cyclicality of the way Bitcoin behaves during Mercury retrograde whilst in eclipse season, and getting some sort of stall out energy, or like it just gets I had a word that I was using, but it's starting to slip my mind now. It's like all the bullish energy gets blunted or something. Anyways, I don't need to waste my time on that today. I'm just showing you these recent 3 iterations of the same setup. Also had about 60 days of total sideways surrounding them. So let's move on. Some of you might remember when I was doing this Mercury retrograde analysis all throughout last year, I mentioned that we tend to get these rallies which end up being fake outs about 5 to 7 days into Mercury retrograde. So I know I touched on that a little bit ago. I want to recap what I was explaining. So we have 25% of the time Mercury retrograde Bitcoin is crazy bullish, and then we have 75% of the time it's sideways and down. So during those time frames where it's typically sideways and down, we still see that during that first week of Mercury retrograde, we can have a very bullish move to the upside that turns out to be a fake out. It gets rejected. And we saw this at the end of 2023 with this December timeframe. So we're entering Mercury retrograde. We moved up bullish for the first 7 days. Let's go back to August of 2023. This was a big pump that came out of nowhere on day 6. And then we have April. We can see day 6, day 5, but generally day 6, we got the highest daily close during that time frame. We did come up to make an M pattern, but needless to say, you can see the pattern is starting to show itself. This was one of your anomaly years. Right here, we have 5 to 6 days pushed to the upside, ended up being a fake out. We even had a similar setup during the last halving. Let me go back to that. I know I was just looking at it moments ago, where you see this green candle coming in on day 4. We've seen that before many times during Mercury retrograde. Also note, this was a solar eclipse. So we don't need to get so specific here, but it's pretty clear that we're getting a pattern. I hope this is making sense to everyone and you're starting to coordinate it all together in your notes. I know that this is a lot of information. Take your time. This is, really unique analysis. It's not looking at the market from the typical way that you're normally hearing it spoken about. This is adding in some other dimensions. And I completely understand this stuff could get a little bit, intense, but I hope that the way that I'm keeping these charts nice and clean and marking everything off for you and explaining it, that it's keeping you on track. Anyways, something that I want you to keep in mind for our upcoming trading week is what I just exposed there, because we're moving into the first week of Mercury retrograde. Bitcoin today trading alone. We had a little bit of a 3-day holiday last Friday. we've been chopping and getting resistance at this level here between 69 and 71. We have yet to concretely close a daily close above 71. I'm going to cover that in a moment. But what I just shared about being bullish maybe 5 to 6 days, 7 days into the start of Mercury retrograde could very well be how this upcoming week turns out. And given that we're only about 4% away from wicking to a new slight all-time high, that's why we could actually have a new all-time high coming up next week before the eclipse. We just need to kind of let this all play out right now, because as we're in eclipse season, this is a very elusive time frame. We should have, been DCAing through this whole cycle. I know we're very late into it now, and a lot of people are just starting to get to put attention into the charts and into the market. And I know that the vibe has now switched to ultra bullish pretty much over the past month to two. We've been here tracking this for years now, so I know that if you're new to this, it might feel like the FOMO's setting in. There's a lot of this confusion, but please be calm, ask questions in our community as needed, and revisit everything I was sharing in my last Red Pill. Also, revisit the post that I just made in Discord earlier this week, where I was just sharing some words of wisdom about the market, about what to do at this time, especially if you're not exposed to these markets. Definitely check that out. And as I said, be aware that this upcoming trading week could very well play out like a majority of the iterations of the way Bitcoin behaves during Mercury retrograde, which is essentially a bullish push-up in the first 5 to 7 days. Now, with all of that being said, and to be 100% transparent with you from a purely technical perspective, Bitcoin, and I don't know if this needs to be said, but Bitcoin is very bullish right now. We have effectively reset the daily RSI for the most part. And although the weekly RSI is absolutely overheated and a correction would be ideal for this market, well, the truth is that Bitcoin has started to close several daily candles above prior cycle highs, about 11 daily candle closes above 69K, which was the November 2021 all-time high. We're going on almost 2 weeks of closing above this level on daily closes. That's an absolute confirmation of how bullish Bitcoin is right now. And we've had at least 5 daily closes above $70,000. Today could be hitting us into that 6-day mark. By the first couple of days of April, if this market doesn't have a little bit of a washout soon, very, very soon, it would be likely that we push up bullish into the first couple days of this solar eclipse, which is what we've been doing lately. So just keep all of this in mind. Now, this is not me trying to talk about any other narratives. I'm putting them all on the sidelines right now, and I'm just exposing what it's like from a technical perspective only. Incredibly bullish charts that we're seeing with Bitcoin and Ethereum. So when we go back and analyze what Bitcoin did around this same time frame in late 2020, which I think we need to, because I am seeing a little bit of a similarity with this V-shaped recovery into some chop before we just had an absolute breakout. Let me show you right here. So we have this moment, V-shape, chop, and then boom. If this is what we are doing now, then you kind of get what I'm talking about, and look at how the annual solar eclipse was at this time too. Once we got through it, we just went straight line breakout. Now the big difference though is this was the 4th solar eclipse of our solar cycle. We don't have that until October. So that just shows you how far ahead. I don't know if I want to call it an accelerated cycle, but it's getting a little bit overheated too quickly. It's nothing like 2017. But I am pointing out that this V-shaped kind of recovery and then the chop after it of really low volatility and then out of nowhere sprung up bullish, it had a lot to do with the solar eclipse. And we had a 22% gain that followed that week. So if Bitcoin was to mimic that, it would be like putting us around 83K Bitcoin. Keep that in mind, all right? Because I just brought this up a little bit ago that the first 7 days or so of Mercury retrograde could be incredibly bullish. And if we were to push up into new all-time highs, 80K could be in the cards. So Also, during that time, Bitcoin effectively doubled in price in like 3 weeks. So that would be like seeing 140K Bitcoin by the halving, which the halving is sitting at April 20th still. I mean, imagine that if we were to see Bitcoin move up. Now, one thing to note is if we were to see that, Bitcoin would take over dominance, and then shortly after that, we would see a meteoric alt season, right? So I just want you to keep that in mind, considering we have a lot of altcoins that are still down 200, 300, 400% from prior all-time highs. So even though a lot of altcoins are looking crazy bullish right now, and it might feel like you're buying high, well, keep in mind that once Bitcoin does truly break into price discovery and it starts pushing into the 80, 90K territory, well, you'll see Bitcoin dominance push up with it. And right after that, shortly, you'll see all of that flood into the altcoins. That could be happening perhaps sooner than we'd imagine. And we don't want to get fancy right now. You know, we have, if you kept track of everything we've been doing here since maybe November of 2022, we've been aware of the energy of this market and the big pivots of this market due to the truth behind the solar cycle and the eclipses. We've been aware of that for a long time now. The speed at which we can accelerate is what's been a little bit more elusive. But generally, we knew we would be full-blown bullish throughout all of 2023, throughout all of 2024, and then 2025 is the pivot. 2026 is probably your market bottom. We knew about this for a long time. So now that we're here and we're living through it and we're tracking it so frequently, I think that's what makes it kind of tough. Sometimes we could overcomplicate things. But needless to say, if we were to have something like this happen, being positioned in alts, even at where they're at now, would not be a stupid move. I'm just sharing my truth. I've been really heavily invested in alts over a year ago. I was buying a lot of altcoins back in October of 2023. So for me, whatever this market does right now, it doesn't really matter. But I know if you're new, I just want you to think about this kind of stuff. So anyways, in this late 2020 timeframe, we saw 4 weekly closes. Let me show you the weekly chart so you can see what I mean. And turn off all this noise for you. So right around here, we saw 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks of getting to the prior all-time highs before just the release of this energy. And if we were to look at where we're at today, we're effectively on that like 4th week. And Bitcoin is looking super bullish into this weekly close after these 2 very confusing candles. It's like a doji into a hammer. I don't like to spend too much time on this candlestick analysis, even though it could be helpful for those that are a little bit more on the advanced side. When you're doing crypto stuff, the energy is in the astrology for sure. Having the awareness of that is going to get you a lot further than looking at candlesticks. But we all can see if we were to close this week where we are now, it would be another new weekly close in price discovery. All in all, crazy bullish. And the interaction that we had at the same level back in 2020, well, we just took off after that. So unless something crazy happens later today before the weekly close, we'd be closing almost 15% up on the month. Let me show you the monthly chart. Yeah, we'd be closing almost 15% up on this monthly close. This would be our 7th month green. And you've heard it, trend is your friend. So when we look back at the 2017 timeframe, this was a much healthier market. Let me show you real quick. So we're about here in this 2017 market. Let me zoom out a little bit more. We're over here. You can see the prior all-time highs. It was all around this March, April timeframe. We started playing around that prior all-time high area, and then we got a couple healthy corrections around there. Let me get back to where we were. Yep, so it was a much healthier market cycle. We were having decent corrections along the way, and you could see around this February through April timeframe in 2017, Bitcoin was in this like decision-making mode, when retesting prior all-time highs. And then, of course, investors were gifted with a late cycle buying opportunity. And as I've said many times, during a bull run, any and all dips are an opportunity to DCA into position. It's important to realize the environment we're in now and how bullish Bitcoin has been in reaction to every single correction. And I know I've said that many times now. So I'm going to take a moment really quickly to pull up this chart because I recently posted it. And I was talking about this step-by-step kind of similarity that we have to February through March of 2017. And I just want to show you what's going on here. We have the 2017 chart at the top. We have the 2024 chart, or where we're at today, at the bottom. We go step by step. So we had the full moon in February. We immediately rose out of that full moon into the following new moon. And then we had a fake out around the new moon plus price increase extending past the new moon. So you see this green candle right here, and then this crazy doji that we had the following day. Well, that was what happened over here. You could see this big green candle and then this washout candle with a big wick to the downside. It is the same. And then we rose past the new moon here, rose past the new moon. And then we get into this third step, which is a correction into the full moon. So you have from after this distributional top, you started correcting into this time frame, retesting this dotted line. And even these two candles, this big red candle followed by this green candle, is so similar to what we just recently watched. Crazy buyback we had over here. And when you look at the full moon, the way that we rose out of the full moon is the same. Now, we don't really need to count the days, but it was about 5 days bullish after that before it ended up being a bull trap, followed by a correction to lower lows. Now, if this was to follow, it would be an absolute gift. I'm not saying that it is, because this would be invalidated if there was any new daily candle closes higher than 74K. But I just wanted to share this because of the similarities in the structure and the fact that it's happening during the same months and around the same time Bitcoin was starting to break all-time highs back in 2017. And of course, this doesn't mean it will play out exactly the same. I want to say that again. It's just very interesting to see how closely these match. If we were to have any break of these candles down here, which I'm going to pull up really quickly so you can see what they are. If we were to have any new daily close below 62K, let's just call it 61,500, then I think that this would likely play out. And now I need to go back to that time frame to show you what we had with the astrology back then. So you can see that there is differences, slight differences. You pull up this chart. It's so silly to see Bitcoin so bullish on a Sunday over and over again. That's a bull run. Gotta love them. All right, let me get back over here. Okay, so I just want to zoom in and show you guys some of the differences. For one, we had our lunar eclipse, solar eclipses, and then we were breaking out after that. So we had our solar and lunar eclipses during February, as opposed to this time we have them in late March and early April. And as I brought up, Bitcoin actually started making new highs, new all-time highs after that solar eclipse, which was the third solar eclipse of our solar cycle. That's the same that it is on April 8th. And we pushed up for about 5 days after. We had this distributional top, and then that turned out to be a fake out, and we went lower. So that's really interesting, because if this was to be the case, if we were to go and make another new leg higher after our solar eclipse, which, I mean, it seems like if Bitcoin's gonna move, it has to move now. Like, it has to do what it needs to do now rather than later. But just because of the effect that eclipses typically have on Bitcoin. But if we were to push up, the timing of all of this would put us into that like April 14th, April-ish time frame, April 12th to 14th, I want to say, maybe April 15th. And that actually aligns with the Year of the Dragon analysis. So I'll get to that in a moment, but this gives us some mixed signals, and that's to be expected anyways because eclipses are very elusive regarding price action, and the months of March and April in particular are the most elusive months during the Year of the Dragon. And speaking of which, you all know I've been tracking the progress of the S&P 500 very closely on a regular basis for over a half a year now in preparation for this exact time in 2024. I started sharing the alpha regarding the fact that the S&P tends to top out into late March and early April during the Year of the Dragon before a pullback into late May and June, which is usually an incredible buying opportunity regarding the traditional markets. Well, in preparation for today's podcast, I decided to check in on the weekly chart for the S&P, and I noticed something that is pretty alarming. And let me pull this up really quickly. Going on the weekly, we're looking at the S&P, and we are at effectively 80 RSI. Now, the last time we were at that level, you can see where I'm hovering this on the RSI right now. The last time we were at that level was over here. It was the highs before the C19 crash. We haven't been this high on the weekly RSI since then. I find that pretty wild. Very crazy. That was only one time. Let me zoom out a little more so you can see how rare this is. By the way, where I'm hovering right now, you could see it is very, very, very rare for us to get up this high. Unbelievable. So there was only one time it was higher, and that was all the way back in, I think, 1995. Oh, we had this moment over here in 2017 as well, and that's pretty powerful because that aligns with the first iconic bull run that that I was talking about moments ago when I was comparing these two charts here. It was the 2017 into 2018 market. So we're about to close our fifth, I believe it's our fifth monthly close green in the stock market. Let me take this all off. Yeah, we're about to close our fifth monthly. We already did. So one interesting thing to mention about the correction we usually see for the stock market into late May and early June is that it retests around the same levels as when we entered the Year of the Dragon. So that would be like February 10th. If we were to go back into that time frame, we can see that around February 10th, we were trading between like 5,060 to 5,000 points. So keep that in mind. That's typically the style of pullback that we get. In most Dragon years, we see around a 5% pullback. In a couple of the more bearish iterations, it's a little under 10% or around 10%. So we have a range of between a 5 to 10% pullback, which makes around 4,800 to 4,850 points on the S&P an area of interest. So if I was to show you from where we are now, getting into this 4,850 would be about 8%, and then a little bit deeper would bring us to around 4,800, around 9%. We have some structure here. That's the last time we had chop and structure. We've been pretty much parabolic since. So if we were to have a little bit more of an extended pullback, it's only about 8%. And remember, the Year of the Dragon is generally bullish from start to finish. So this pullback I'm bringing up is just a mid-year healthy correction to keep the show rolling for the remainder of the year. The only time over the past 100 years that we had a bigger correction than 15%, for instance, during this stage of the bull run was in 1940, after the May 10th invasion with World War II. Let me pull back to those times and show you what I'm talking about. Also, apologies for these charts loading so slowly. That's been the thing that I've been having to deal with for a long time now, this horrible internet connection. Let me go to the weekly. It might just speed things up. Yeah. Also, I hope you guys are having an amazing day. Okay, so we're here in 1940, Year of the Dragon. We topped out into April 8th, and then we had a falling off the cliff moment. And that was the only time we had a bigger correction than 5 to 10%. It was about a 30% correction, I believe, maybe 28%. Yeah, so you can see right there. That's a huge correction for the stock market. And as I've shared with you all plenty of times, this year of 1940 matches our year in so many ways. Both are the year of the dragon, both have the same exact lunar and solar eclipse dates, both have the Gregorian and Hebrew calendars synchronized. So this is why I'm taking the April 8th solar eclipse seriously, because on that day in 1940 was a big development in World War II when the National Socialists invaded Denmark and Norway. And that was immediately after that solar eclipse. And if you look at the S&P chart on April 8th, well, we were bullish until that very moment. That date marked the top before a big correction. And that happened on May 10th, just a month later, after the National Socialists invaded France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. As well, Prime Minister Chamberlain stepped down and Winston Churchill was appointed to be the new Prime Minister of Britain. So May 10th is really the big date in all of this when we're looking back in that time regarding the war narrative. And it all started on this pivot of April 8th. May 10th, by the way, is 33 days after our upcoming solar eclipse on April 8th, which matches the same in 1940 during the early stages of World War II, 33 being the master number of transmutation. And here we are today in the very early stages of what could be considered World War III, and the false flags are ramping up more and more. We just had the Crocus City Hall attack in Moscow, Russia on March 22nd, the Gregorian 322 date. 322 is the skull and bones number, and allegedly 144 people died in that tragedy. That 144 code is powerful. It's 12 12s. 144 is 12 squared, a number mentioned several times in scripture. And just 4 days after that event, the Francis Scott Key Bridge ritual happened in Baltimore, Maryland, and that bridge started its construction in 1972, and that's very important you take note of. We had the Munich Massacre in 1972, which I covered during my Year of the Dragon Decoded here on Patreon. That was a terrorist attack during the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich, Germany. Remember, this year we also have the Summer Olympics in Europe. It will be in Paris, France. Please take note of that. We're going to be talking about Paris a lot in a moment. Also in 1972, in May, there was a key event called the Moscow Summit, where U.S. President Richard Nixon visited Moscow, and you could go read all about that. Well, Nixon also resigned in the year of 1974, which coming up will be the 50th anniversary of that. So keep that number 50 in mind because it's the Jubilee number, and we just passed through the Jubilee in 2023. Remember, 50 years to the day was the start of this current war in Israel with Gaza, measuring from the Yom Kippur War in 1973. It's working like perfectly in cyclical patterns. And I've also been notified a couple times within our Discord regarding 1972. Remember, I've been talking about this since the last time I did a podcast with Decode Your Reality and Archaics. I believe it was back in November of 2023, so that was over 4 months ago. And that was before I even heard of any data from Archaics regarding 1972. He informed me of his data during that podcast after I shared my insights on the Munich Massacre. Let me quickly pull that up and the significance of this event of the Munich Massacre, because it had to deal with Palestine and Israel. You can see that right here. Palestinian militant organization called Black September. And yeah, I talked about this in my Year of the Dragon Decoded as well. So check that out if you haven't already. But since then, several posts have been brought to my attention regarding 1972 in the markets. So when we tune into the charts of the S&P 500 during 1972, let me see real quick. This was before a Shemitah year, by the way, the year before. But when we tune into the markets in this 1972 year, you can see the market topped out effectively into mid-April, around April 12th, and then a correction into May 9th. That was the lows that we had for the remainder of the year. So pretty interesting because it follows a similar pattern to what I've shown in my Year of the Dragon analysis. And during 1972, the correction that happened into the month of May was also just a back test of the same time frame of early February, late January, which would be the start of that Chinese New Year. So it also matches very, very nicely. Also, we had Mercury retrograde. I marked this from March 21st. Yeah, it was from March 21st through April 14th. And Mercury was in the same sign during that year. It was also in Aries. But we did not have an eclipse back then, so that is slightly different. So for those who follow that concept of 1972 and you believe the markets are mimicking as well for 1972, well, there you go. It aligns with the Year of the Dragon analysis month by month as well. Also, during presidential election years, we tend to see the months of April and May are pullbacks. I've talked about this a lot. We can have a bullish start to the month of April, but it's rare that we extend bullish through the end of April into May without any pullbacks. And even in the two iterations that I've shown where we do extend bullish into May, we still had a noticeable pullback during May, so the end of May by the monthly close, and into June. So in 100% of the iterations, we still got a pullback somewhere within the territory of where the start of that Chinese year price was. So since we have this upcoming solar eclipse about a week out from now, whenever I think of eclipses, I think of the band Soundgarden. I'm not sure if everyone here knows about them, but check out that song Black Hole Sun. I think about that all the time when I think of eclipses. And it's wild because the singer of that band, Chris Cornell, let me bring him up really quickly. Chris Cornell was born in 1964, was during the Year of the Dragon, and he died at 52. And 52 years ago from today, if you take from 2024 minus 52, you're getting to 1972, and that was the year we were just talking about. And another gem that I found was that JFK died 2 months and 22 days before the start of the Year of the Dragon in 1964, the year that Chris Cornell was born. And I know this solar eclipse coming up is gotten a lot of attention, so that's why I've started to think about these very exoteric things in pop culture and trying to just add some little nuance for you all that are interested in me decoding the solar eclipse more. This is what we're getting into now. So it's just interesting how 2 months and 22 days before the Year of the Dragon, JFK was assassinated. And he died on the 22nd day of November, the same day that the movie Napoleon came out last year by Ridley Scott, starring Joaquin Phoenix. And you guys always hear about the Phoenix, right? Well, Joaquin Phoenix plays Napoleon, who was the Emperor of France during the French Revolution. And you want to make note of that because France is important. You'll be hearing that come up again during this decode in a moment. And back in 1964, which we were just talking about Black Hole Sun and the eclipse and tied to Chris Cornell and him being ritualized. Well, the Year of the Dragon in 1964, tying in this particular year, that actually started on the day that left 322 days left in the year, which is the 322 Skull and Bones number. That connects to the day this year that the terrorist attack happened in Moscow on March 22nd. And we know JFK was assassinated in Texas. And on April 8th, we have the Great American Eclipse forming an X over the state of Texas. And we know Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the nephew of JFK and is actively running for president during this election cycle in 2024. So there is definitely overlap in the timelines. And one thing that's very interesting about RFK Jr., let me show you. His middle name is Francis. And we just had the Francis Scott Key Memorial Bridge ritual in Baltimore, near the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And that's named after the individual who allegedly wrote the poem, which became the lyrics to the Star-Spangled Banner. That's the United States national anthem. Let me show you some of the gematria here on Francis Scott Key. It's unbelievable. 52 in Chaldean, just like how 52 years ago was 1972, the year that we were decoding. And the Francis Scott Key Bridge started construction in 1972. You can't make this up. The bridge effectively had a 52-year life cycle. And in gematria, Francis Scott Key gives you 52 in Chaldean cipher. And this name Francis that we were talking about, it ties to France. And again, there's ties to the USA when we talk about France. Same colors of the flag. And the more important thing to bring out regarding symbolism is the Statue of Liberty, which is one of the main symbols of the USA. That was a gift from France to the United States. And we have this upcoming solar eclipse, this upcoming Summer Olympics, in France. So what does this all mean? France is the key. Francis Scott Key. Remember, the flag of France is actually the same as the flag of Kansas City. Let me show you that real quick. I know I've talked about this a while ago when I did one of my first decodes for the Super Bowl. This was the flag of the city of Kansas City, Missouri. It is the flag of France. And remember, they won the Super Bowl last year. This is big. So they did redesign this flag, but it's a big part of the code because the Kansas City Chiefs have been dominating the NFL over the past 5 years with 3 Super Bowl wins and 4 Super Bowl appearances in 5 years. This is absolutely revealing code. It's all about France and the United States and the concept of revolution. And perhaps some of you are aware that there's this movie coming out in April called Civil War by Alex Garland. And on April 12th, that's the date that this movie will be coming out, right there around this solar eclipse time frame. Go check out the trailer for this if you haven't heard of it. And the cover of this movie, or at least this teaser poster, is the Statue of Liberty, the torch. And there's some men posted up on it holding sniper rifles. And remember what I just said. The Statue of Liberty was a gift to the USA from France. And we know France is having their issues right now. Lots of protests. So going through this revolutionary phase. And what the USA stands for is this concept of democracy and freedom and liberty and justice, all tied back to Themis and Ma'at. So these are concepts that I teach in my Decoding Mastermind course. If you're interested in learning more about the symbolism and all these nuances that I'm talking about, that's available to you guys for the biggest discount since you are Patreon supporters. And that's a brand new project. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. And I do have more modules added to it in the future. So I'm really looking forward to getting those out there very soon. I'm working hard behind the scenes, but you'll be learning a lot about this symbolism of the Statue of Liberty and where it originates from and what it means. And it has a lot of power for this particular year because of the symbolism that we see with the Summer Olympics coming up. So why did they make this movie cover the torch with the flame and tied to the Statue of Liberty? Just like the symbol of this upcoming Paris Summer Olympics is the flame, the Summer Olympics in Paris, France. So consider the gematria of France, because this really ties everything in together. France giving you 24 in Chaldean. We're in the 24 year. We're in the Hebrew year 5784, adds up to 24. The year that is the year of the X, 24th letter in the alphabet. The 24 is the symbol of Jupiter. And we're in the sign of Pisces in sidereal astrology until April 13th, around the day where this new movie Civil War comes out on April 12th. So regarding the astrology, the reference I made to sidereal Pisces, well, Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. I was just saying how the Jupiter symbol is the 24, as you can see right here. Now, Jupiter in Gematria gives us 99, and this is very important because we have on the 99th day of the year is our solar eclipse, April 8th, and you can see that right there. And we'll be in Sidereal Pisces during that time. And I believe in lunar astrology, we'd have the moon in Pisces from part of April 5th until part of April 7th, leading into that solar eclipse before it moves into Aries, ruled by Mars, the god of war. So this new supermoon total solar eclipse will be in Aries, tied to the god of war. Keep that in mind. As well, Mercury will be retrograde in the sign of Aries. And for those that follow tropical, the sun is already in Aries if you're following tropical until April 19th. And Aries gives you that 52. Earlier, we made a couple 52 connections since 52 years ago was the 1972 year when the markets pushed up slightly bullish into mid-April when Mercury retrograde was happening in the sign of Aries. So we do have some similarities as well. And it's so interesting that the stock market hit its high in 1972 first on April 12th. And it's the same day that this Civil War movie is coming out, April 12th, which was on the anniversary of the American Civil War. Remember, the president during that time was Abraham Lincoln, who was assassinated on April 15th, another April connection. And I've warned about this date of April 15th many times since it's a key ritual date, the day of the sinking of the Titanic, the Boston Marathon bombing, the Notre Dame fire. Speaking of flame, speaking of fire, symbolism, and Paris, France. And that's just a couple of incidences that happened on April 15th. And that will be exactly 24 days since March 22nd when the terrorist attack happened in Russia. So another thing to mention is this Civil War movie coming out soon is distributed by A24 films, like April 24. I'm just saying, the movie comes out in April. 24 is all I needed to see. And then you can see right when they're explaining the story of this, it includes Texas right away. Texas is where we'll be having that solar eclipse forming an X, of course, the Great American Eclipse. So another thing to mention is many believe that this terrorist attack in Russia was exactly the same as the beginning of the movie Tenet. And if we take from the date that Tenet was released in the United States, which was September 3rd of 2020, I believe. That's correct. And if we connect it to March 22nd, which was the day that we just had this event in 2024, you're going to see that it connects by 3 years and 202 days. You remove the 0 in the rules of numerology, you have 322. 322 into the 322 date. So for those that are conspiring that it was just predictive programming showing you that an event would happen, well, there it is. I mean, it's pretty obvious, the 322 Skull and Bones number. And if we connect the day Tenet was released to the upcoming date of the Civil War movie that'll be released on April 12th, you're going to see something incredible. 3 years, 222 days. 3 years, 223 days, which is 3223. It's a palindrome. It works forwards and backwards as the 322. So take a moment to consider how mind-blowing this is. And remember, the movie Tenet, initially the whole plot is to prevent World War III. And it has everything to do with Ukraine and Russia, since that opera house that was bombed was in Kyiv. That was before Russia-Ukraine invasion, by the way. But then we just saw how it reversed energy and it happened in Russia specifically. And it was in the beginning of that movie. And then the next thing that this movie develops into, which is a ritual at the Oslo airport in Norway. And remember earlier I mentioned on April 9th in 1940 during World War II, Norway was invaded during the Year of the Dragon, right after the solar eclipse that year. This is insane to piece together. So that's our decode, and please know that for any wolves over there in Norway, Denmark, or the Scandinavian nations, which I know there are many, please don't let this push you into a state of fear. That's never the point of these decodes. It's just to bring these connections and this code into your awareness so you can prepare accordingly. And I've been talking about this stuff for a while now, so it's just that we're here now in this time frame, and that's what's making it, the energy buildup become so noticeable, and the false flags are starting to unfold more regularly. And to expect that and having this awareness and this gnosis should keep you calm and able to navigate this without letting it worry you. That's what it's done for me, at least. So it does really feel like we're in a time loop, and the events are unfolding piece by piece, just like how last fall time during the year of the rabbit, we had the start of the war in Israel, and in 1939, during the year of the rabbit, we had the development into what was considered World War II, and definitely started to heat up in the year of 1940, the year of the dragon, during the months of March, April, and May, with April being the pivot month, and here we are. We're there. So it's just wild to have known about this for so long, and then to see these big Hollywood movies showing us these events and watching everything come together. And I think that ritual that happened with the blackout of this cargo ship in Baltimore, that was telling us something, because that was also very similar to like that movie Leave the World Behind. Wild how they did that. So logistics and issues, that is definitely something to keep in mind with blackouts especially. But let's get into the charts. I know that we've taken a lot of time in this podcast with the decode. I know you guys appreciate this stuff, because when I make these things, I'm not just repeating nonsense and giving you guys the stuff that you hear everywhere else. I know that this is very unique and a take on this reality and how it ties into markets that it needs to be spoken about, and it's only once a week, so it is like my way of giving you guys the best possible content you can get, tying in all this stuff as one, and to prepare you in advance for it to happen. So we're going to move over really quickly just to this pi cycle chart, because we've been talking about it for a while now, but we're still kind of doing what we typically do. We get to this green moving average, get rejected, and then start to get some resistance below it. Then it follows with a correction back down into the 111-day moving average, which we haven't had yet. That sits today at 51K. And like I shared in the last podcast, that 51K aligns with our weekly 21 exponential moving average, and that hasn't changed. And also we've been sideways the whole week, so of course it hasn't really been much of an update, but this was really the last time we had a little bit of chop before a continuation, and our yellow moving average right here, 51K, is exactly at this level, which is also where this moving average is, and something that we've done in the past. So just keep that in mind. Now we're going to move on through the Bitcoin analysis pretty quickly, just because we've already done this, talking about it today. Our 3-month close is incredibly bullish. We're closing into price discovery on a 3-month quarterly above 66%. Wow, that's pretty weird how it's 66.68. Imagine it closes at 6.66. Like, damn, bro. That'd be too obvious. But yeah, just incredibly bullish. Let's look at the monthly and see where things are at. And again, yeah, we just be closing another month. Oh, actually, this would be the first month closing in price discovery, because here we had resistance, and March was just, incredible performance. It aligns with the stock market analysis as well, where March tends to be a very good month, and then April and May is where we get some corrections, like I said earlier. Let's look at the weekly. Weekly, everything looking bullish. All of our moving averages in a bullish posture. We have the 55 even above the 200s, which we have not seen in a while. That flip has started to happen, and ever since then, we have 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, and 200s at the bottom. Beautiful. This is a perfect structure to have. And with any deeper pullbacks, you just want to keep that 21 EMA in mind. Now we have the daily. This correction down to the 34 was an amazing bounce that we had off of it. As I've shown you, it aligns very similarly to everything that was going on back in 2017. If we were to take the time frame from when we were at the top to the full correction, it was 22 days, and that would put us into around April 4th. I do believe I brought that up in the last red pill. So yeah, kind of mixed, very, very mixed. It doesn't need to be day by day by day perfect, but at this time, if we were to get any corrections, I would be looking at the 34 exponential. If we were to close below that, that would signal to me a retest of this as like a double bottom in the micro. And then any daily closes below 62, I think, would trigger more continuation to the downside. But as of now, we're looking bullish. We're looking bullish, but with resistance at 71. So keep the next week in mind. We could be bullish, as I explained earlier. And if we were to start closing dailies above that 73, 74, then this would likely be invalidated. But we do have the fact that this was after eclipse season. We pushed slightly bullish, and then we had our breakdown a little bit later. So all in all, we could get slight slight push up into a little bit higher, and then have like a double top fake out to just squeeze some shorts, and then also pull back the other direction to liquidate all the longs. Because that's what happened over here too. Once we got back to the all-time highs, we had a huge liquidation ritual. Here, when we started pulling back into 60K, huge liquidation ritual. That's what the elite want to do right now. It's the only way to get all your Bitcoin, so don't let them take it from you. Let's look at ETH. ETH looking pretty good, but it's the same story as Bitcoin. We're coming into the same sort of resistance on this buyback, and if I was to pull some fibs, if I haven't already, I have. Yeah, you want to keep this in mind. Any resistance below the golden pocket is a sign that we could actually show enough weakness to roll over and test the lows again. So this isn't looking that great until we start actually trading back in the golden pocket again regarding this micro analysis. But when we zoom out, you can see that we're above the 786. And the fact that we have this market structure whilst Bitcoin is trading at all-time highs, that is very similar to like the final months before we go into a true alt season. We're not there yet. I've told you guys this before. Whilst we have total 2, let me zoom out and show you what I'm saying for those that are confused about this. Whilst we have total 2 and total 3 below all-time highs, we are not in a true alt season. So we have total 2 trading in the golden pocket. We have total 3 trading in the golden pocket. Perfectly rejected off the 702, by the way, with total 2 perfectly rejected off the top of the golden pocket at the 786. Trading in here for a little bit of time would be healthy. Now, we just got to remember the type of vibe we're in when we have true alt season is when Bitcoin is in the stages of pulling off that like doubling from prior all-time highs. So it would be everything from the 73 to like 140K move. If Bitcoin was to repeat what it typically does, well, then that would kind of be the moment where you go, okay, get ready for this because it's going to go crazy. But you don't need to wait for that. You should be DCAing now. You should be building positions before that moment, right? Let's get over to XRP. Let's look at the monthly on XRP because I want to see if there's any developments there. Oof, none. How much sideways has this been? This has been such an arduous chop. We're going on 23 months now, just grinding to the upside, but really nothing spectacular because we haven't even gotten a higher monthly than we did back in July of 2023. So yeah, we're in a W right now though in this structure, which could be playing out over several weeks. Yep, that's a clean W. So what I would want to look at right now is this level of 66 cents. If we could pop above it, I'd assume perhaps a little bit of resistance, and then back testing that neckline at 66 would be crazy bullish. And then let me show you a little bit of this breakout target. I would pull the full wick because it's XRP. Yeah, it would just be a retest of the 382. It would just be a retest. Oh, actually, no, never mind. It would be a retest of the golden pocket at the bottom. So pretty much returning back to what we did in July. But, I mean, we're on the midst of breakout. This type of coiling up action can't be held down too long. So XRP is in that moment right now. It was in it during the last alt season too, where it's like the last mover. You know, it tends to really wait and wait and wait until the dominance spills over into it, and that seems to be no different. Now, the one thing to mention though is when we looked at the 2017 market, we had this moment where Bitcoin did like a 30% correction into late March, and then we had XRP just do a straight line breakout. So it'd be really crazy if there's any more developments with this SEC case, and that could lead to some sort of impulse with XRP. But again, that's just a waiting game, and you should be positioned before that. See, that's the thing that matters most. Get positioned when shit's boring. Don't wait till there's some miracle that happens. And be cautious with how you divvy up your portfolio. Don't be 80% in XRP, right? You would be not appropriately designing a portfolio. There's so much more opportunity out there, and this has been proven time and time again. So you got to be methodical about this. But this type of coiling up structure, W breakout, it's looking pretty bullish. 700 days of higher lows and higher highs. We're in the midst of an uptrend. Trend is your friend. The only thing is now we're in the middle of this range here between 18 cents and 2. If this was to break out, it would be a huge symmetrical triangle breakout with price discovery. It would go to all-time highs. And that's in a very, very similar setup to over here. It was just building this higher lows, higher highs in the micro, and then eventually once it cleared the key resistance, it was a straight line breakout. Here our key resistance is this level right here of $1, because there's not a whole lot going on above $1 to 2. So that $1 is really kind of the phase that we're in right now that we want to breach, and we want to start closing macro closures higher. Until then, okay, so we're looking at Decentraland. This is looking good. We had in the past bear market a 95% correction. We went even lower into right around the last eclipse, pivoted pretty bullish into this recent eclipse, but we're getting rejection here at this key level. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that's the 236 fib. Okay, the 382. We are now in the phase of making a decision. Do we want to break out? And this got met by a 17% rejection after it came up to the same level. But we back tested the 236, and then we're holding structure, higher lows, higher highs. This is looking pretty good. This is getting ready to break out. And the one thing to keep in mind about this is it is, oh my goodness, 800% away from all-time highs. So like I was telling you before, there's shit like Solana and Ethereum that are like, what, 50% away from retesting all-time highs? Why would you even care about that stuff? This thing right here, it has so much more upside potential, 700% to just retest all-time highs. And look at what it did from the C19 crash to this. All-time high was a 20,000% move, right? So where it's at right now is effectively entering this phase. It's getting close. I would say that it would be fair for this to pass into the $1.40-ish, $1.50 maybe, to clear this level right here of the 0.5 fib and to clear this level at about $1. But retest this area, that would be the phase where I think, yeah, we would be there. And it gets crazy after that. A majority of the gains come in after that moment, and they're fast. Yeah, let's look at the daily chart. Yes, things held down, and this is where you want to get excited, because while stuff is down, not all the way up near all-time highs, you have opportunity. Yeah. Let me see real quick if I could get some moving averages. Okay, very much coiling up. It back tested the 55, and then this 200 exponential has been in the cards. So if there was any deeper pullbacks, you'd want to look for that 200 exponential, that green moving average, and around the 236, anything around there's a buy. And then these are the type of projects that you have venture capital, 2 to 3% positions, and you just hold on to them until everything in total 2, total 3 starts to show some exhaustion, which would be like a weekly chart, 90 to 95 RSI. But it's down right now. It's not even close it's not even close. I'm going to move on. There's not a whole lot to say about this because there's very limited chart history. There wasn't a prior bull run, really, so I can't talk too much about it. I mean, it did have a launch right near the final months of the 2017 cycle into the 2018 alt season, but just it's so limiting in data, I can't really talk too much on it. Let's go to ICP. Okay, I haven't covered this in some time, but we have got above the 236. Round of applause, everyone. And now we've gotten a little bit higher. Okay, so the total move down here was probably 99%. Yep. Okay, great. Oof. We're up right now off of this October 14th pivot to 500%. Very nice. Okay, so we're getting into the first area of a little bit of sideways before we broke down into the next leg lower. That's a key area. I'm going to mark this off in my chart between here and between here. So this is a very important area for ICP to get above, and solid truth is that this has 3,000% to getting back to these prior all-time highs. So huge opportunity if you just want to play the alt season game. I mean, at best, if it can only get up into the golden pocket, it's still almost a 10x. So keep that in mind. I'm not telling you to invest in this thing, but this is like a little goes a long way in opportunities compared to playing around with the stock market or something. So yeah, the one thing to say though is that this doesn't move in a very sophisticated and mature fashion. This is a shit coin. I mean, look at this. It lost 99.99% of its value. I know the story about this as it was being launched. It was basically a dumpage on retail. Solid insiders just de-risked the moment that this went into public exchanges. Classic New World Order move. The symbolism, though, I like for this dragon year. I'm going to be honest. It's the analemma, the infinity symbol. We also got a little bit of red, purples, blues. That might be the move for the year of the dragon. So anyways, we know that this effectively trades off of eclipses as well because it pivoted right after the last eclipse perfectly into this eclipse that we're in now. Yeah, so it could retest this area of $200 in the next cycle. Just considering that's the level that we tend to push into, a little bit above the 786 if we can't get into price discovery, the golden pocket. Conservatively, you would want to look at the 702. Can't really say too much about this though because there's no prior bull runs. Let's go to Filecoin. Oh great, another one of these examples. Oof, but not good. Okay, I don't like, let me show you a couple things why I'm saying I don't like this. You see this chop over here? This was all throughout the bottom of the last bear market and we went just as low. So this thing, all of its gains, it lost everything. All of the money that came into it left it. So a 98% correction, it's pretty normal for altcoins. Now we're starting this breakout mode. And the cool thing about this is once it could clear the 382, I do think it'll quickly move into the 702 into 786 area. You can see a little bit of a rejection right around here at $88 and then some action around 60. Let me show you a couple things. This is a key level, $16. And this is the next key level right here. We played around here for a lot longer than you might imagine. Let me show you. 200 days trading within and then back testing before it went into this blow off top. So we want to keep an eye on those levels because look, when we came back down to them, that was what we held before we broke down into the bottom of the bear. That's the key levels of 16 to 20. Anything clearing this 0.5 fib of $23 to $24, then this thing can go break out in a straight line like it has done in the past. So yeah, right there you have 1,000% move. between the 21-22 level and the current all-time high. Opportunity, a lot more opportunity than fucking around with Solana within all-time highs. So, yeah, this is one of those plays that not a bad idea for venture capital. Some movement to the upside potentially, but not a good chart. So I got to admit, like I did a little bit earlier with Decentraland and ICP just a moment ago, shitcoin chart, nothing impressive about this. Very little data regarding past bull runs. If you want an example of an incredible chart, like one of the best charts besides Bitcoin, look at the Dogecoin chart. That's a great example. Every 4 years, it's breaking out into price discovery. It has a very similar time frame that it likes to break out into price discovery. When it starts to become bullish after a bear market is also very similar. It's cyclical. Its all-time high to all-time low is similar, kind of like what Bitcoin does. And then it has chart data going all the way back to like 2014. It has more chart data than Ethereum. So study the Doge chart if you want to get a little bit better at seeing what are good looking charts versus what are complete shitcoin charts like this. No offense to Filecoin, I'm not calling it a bad project or the people that are a part of it, but the way that investors speculate on it and trade it in the chart that is formed as it trades off the US dollar, it does not look good. So I'm just being honest here. Anything that came into the absolute lows of 2019 after this bull run is nonsense. Nothing should do that. It should hold structure. It should have higher lows, but this has not. So that's a key red flag why you would want to keep it venture capital. Mamma mia, what am I looking at? Oh my God. AIOZ. I marked the all-time high, I guess, because that was the chart that I was given. We do effectively have a little bit over a couple of years of data going on to it. Yeah, okay. Wow. So this thing from launch lost 99.5%, but I'm going to guess. Is this like a 10,000%? Holy shit, yeah, dude, fuck. No, it's 10,000 on the money. But what a move, dude. What a move. From the October solar eclipse. Shocking. So all the people that think that's woo-woo and the eclipses don't matter, it's like I could pull every chart I've pulled up so far, it's proven that that was the lows on many examples. Anyways, right after that solar eclipse, this thing went fucking parabolic. It went up 1,700% in 40 days. A little bit of chop, and it has now come back up into retesting this pivot point. Now, there's very much thin air between here and here, so let me mark off 2 key points. One is the area we just got rejected at momentarily, and then right about here, I'll put this. Wow, that could be the back test. This could have been the moment to build the position. Yeah, I wouldn't touch this right now because there's really no way to identify what's the next move. Yeah, you only have between here and the all-time high 200%. Look at the Dogecoin chart. You have, I think, 350 to 400% to retest all-time highs. Banking on this going into price discovery and much, much further is not safe. It is possible. Like, everything is possible in this matrix. But yeah, we've already started to make it into the top of this golden pocket. I wouldn't want to put too much belief. Oops, sorry. What did I just do? So I'm turning these fib levels off, log, and I want to see where this 4236 is. It's about $12. I'm going to mark that. If this shit goes to $12, mamma mia. Yeah, $11. Let's call it 11.11. So it's another 1,000% from here if we can make it up to there. It's possible. It very much is in an alt season, absolutely. But yeah, you're kind of like you missed the accumulation zone because above 382 fib is not my vibe. I don't like to start trade. I don't like to heavily invest in something at the after the 382. So everything that's above the 382, I build much slower and little amounts. But have fun, guys. Like, I mean, this type of shit could do. This could happen in a lot of other plays. A lot. There's a lot of plays that lose 99% of their value and then they pivot and then can just go incredibly bullish very fast. And even de-risking right here, I mean, 10,000%. If you were to pull up a, if you were to just do $500 plus de-risking where it's at now, up 9,000%, you just turned $500 into almost 50 grand. It's amazing what you can do in some of these plays. So a little goes a long way. Banking on putting everything is tough because if you got in at the wrong time and then it lost 99% of its value over the course of over 2 years, you wouldn't be happy. So it's really about, positioning yourself effectively. And this is not an opportunity, in my opinion, anymore. It's a little bit overheated, but crazy move. Wow. I'm going to try to get to the Superverse really quickly. Okay. It's a very similar story. So quick notes on this. It's about 260% up, no chart data, so very, very speculative. It broke through into price discovery to the downside. It's still in price discovery to the downside until it breaks $5. Lower highs. So you can see this high right here, and then you could see the next lower high was recently. It got rejected at the same exact time frame as the last project I looked at, so they're all sort of moving in synchronicity. Oh, by the way, with this AIOZ project, it's an artificial intelligence project that is in collaboration with Alibaba. So I believe that's probably what has led to this sort of move. But then on the other hand, you have the same shit happening on the same dates with this Project Super. So it's astrology that's running this whole thing, not the partnerships. Partnerships just might lead to a little more speculation, Maybe instead of only going up 2,000%, it would have made it to 3,000% if it would have mimicked the style of move that the last project did. The only thing on the last project is, yes, it did do a 10,000% move, but I think it effectively lost 99.99% of all of its value. At the end of the day, it's splitting hairs. They're both shitcoin charts. You would be lucky to have positioned yourself in them before these types of moves. And at this time, there's not a whole lot of upside potential, considering so many other projects can go up 200%. It's right there at the 702 fib. When we get rejections in this area, we do tend to chop a little bit. I'll show two other areas of interest. It's down here, but I think we've cleared that area already, unless there's a bigger correction in Bitcoin. But if Bitcoin was to do a 20% correction from here, this thing could absolutely come back down to 50 something cents. We have 70 to 80% corrections during bull runs all the time for altcoins, especially very speculative stuff like this. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Be very cautious, guys, when you're looking at charts like this. I know that they've done amazing moves lately, and you might think, oh, it's going to keep going. I need to go all in. That's not how this works. You want to buy stuff when it was boring. And there are charts right now, like the mana chart, for instance, is much, much lower and has so much room to the upside in comparison to something like this, where you're speculating and hoping for it to go into price discovery when it's already in price discovery to the downside. It's just had a bullish pivot lately. So keep this stuff in mind, family. I hope you guys enjoyed today's decode. I worked very hard on organizing all that information for you, kind of like this being April 2024 decoded. And I'm really looking forward to see how the next couple days go as we enter Mercury retrograde. As I've told you, the first 5 days to 7 days do tend to be a little bit of a bullish push up, and then we get some fake out rejections. And if we were to do that this time around, it would be timed with the solar eclipse, and it would be very, very similar to April of last year when we had this move up into this time frame and then got a little bit of a rejection after the eclipse. So we'll wait and see how this all goes. I would not be surprised if we get random push to the upside after this weekly close, but I do need to finish off by mentioning that we have this CME gap for Bitcoin around 64,000. We have our lowest daily close on the CME chart right below that. And if we were to come and fill that now, that would probably be healthy for Bitcoin. It would bring altcoins down with it, and that would give an excellent buying opportunity for everyone. So keep that in mind. And I'll be catching you guys all very, very soon on the next Red Pill podcast. In the meantime, feel free to ask questions in our Discord, and I'll be keeping you updated early next week if anything comes up. Appreciate every single one of you. Much love.